Did I just waste 10 years of my prime on this? My back certainly didn't used to hurt this much. Since I've started making videos about my background in classical music, and considering most of what I do now doesn't seem to necessitate formal classical training, a lot of people have started to ask me if it's worth it to get a degree in music. And while I'd love to be able to answer that for everyone, I honestly can't. But maybe my own experiences will help give you another perspective from someone who has lived through that and survived to tell the tale. I mean, it wasn't that bad, I guess. As someone who's become most well known, I guess, for simple piano pieces that most beginners can play and how to make synth patches, I've often asked myself the question, was it really worth it to get 2 degrees in classical piano performance? And if you had asked me that question right after I finished my master's degree about a decade ago, I probably would have said, yeah, I probably didn't need those. In fact, at that time, I kind of resented the fact that I had spent all that time getting those degrees when I truly wanted to be doing something else. At that point, I just kind of wished that I had gotten started earlier on production and the recording side of things. But with a little age and just slightly more maturity, maybe, and a back that now hurts for no apparent reason, I do have a slightly different view on it today. Where I live, there's pretty much one option presented to music students who excel at their instrument. Go to college and major in whatever instrument you happen to be good at, and eventually graduate, at which point you get to teach that instrument to other people. Maybe even play the occasional recital for fellow faculty members or students at whatever institution where you end up teaching. And while there's absolutely nothing wrong with that path, I started to get the feeling, before I even really fully realized it, that it wasn't what I ultimately wanted to do with the rest of my life. So, what other options were there? Well, that's something that I had to stumble my way to through a series of experiences that were maybe the less traditional route to get to where I've ended up today. I was always interested in making my own music. I was fascinated by composers much more than performers coming up through the classical world. What they did seemed magical, and I wanted to understand it and become a part of it somehow. This led to an interest in film scores and video game scores because they were doing interesting things combining new technologies with older techniques and orchestrations, and this led to my eventual intrigue with electronic music and sort of incorporating it with my own musical style, though I still had to figure out what my own musical style actually would be. And I started to discover over time that there were people doing this outside of film music as well, which may be obvious to some of you who grew up with it, but I just hadn't been exposed to those types of things. So obviously from here, I just wanted to learn as much as humanly possible about music production and making music with a computer. And none of my training had prepared me for any of that. In fact, all of those things were strangely looked down upon anytime I brought it up in the classical world that I sort of existed in. That world seemed impossible for me to get into at the time. It was completely foreign to me. I had no idea how that kind of music was made, hadn't heard of a DAW yet, and after all, I was really good at what I was doing. And that was what I knew, so I just continued with my studies. And I also felt this weird obligation because everyone told me how much promise I had and how much potential I should fulfill in their footsteps, so I had this weird feeling that I didn't want to let my teachers down. And as I began to become more familiar with the world that I actually wanted to enter, after becoming aware of its existence, I discovered that a lot of the people I really admired who were doing cool things in the areas that I wanted to be in had little to no formal training at all. Some of them couldn't read music at all, and yet seemed unencumbered by all of this second guessing that I was doing artistically. It just really felt like a world that I didn't belong in, because I was totally unfamiliar with it. And honestly, I was a little jealous of those who seemed to fit into that world and exist there so freely. So, as evidenced by these artists who were doing the thing that I wanted to do, formal training was not necessary anymore. Maybe it was even a hindrance at times, as it certainly was for me. And one thing is absolutely for certain, no one outside of the walls of a university or the world of academia gives a flying fraggle rock whether or not you have a degree. They only care that your work is interesting and that you're a good person to work with. And that's pretty much it. Relationships and good quality work trump everything else, especially degrees. In the classical world, if your emphasis is performance, you won't learn anything other than how to perform your instrument and how to teach it to others. Definitely nothing about how to earn a living from making music on your own once you get outside the walls of a university. And if your aim is composition, not all composition teachers are created equally, so you're definitely going to be at the mercy of your mentor in terms of what you actually get out of it. I happened to get really lucky with my composition teacher. That was actually the most valuable thing that I've ever done for my own music, was studying composition with Luigi Zanninelli, because there's a real tendency towards snobbery in the world of academic music. Every other composition teacher that came in and I would try to have a master class or a lesson with was pretty much only interested in intellectually driven avant-garde, and they'd look at you as a Neanderthal if you even suggested that you were interested in more functional harmony or traditional melody writing. And that time with Mr. Z was actually really valuable because I was just studying how to make music. I learned nothing about music technology, but I think that made my ideas stronger in the long run because I was able to communicate not just with texture, but also with my musical and harmonic language. It was a little brutal at times, but a bit of a crucible in which I really feel like I came out the other side a lot stronger. But just one problem, I still had to learn all the recording, mixing, and production skills myself. But thankfully, the internet exists. And while there are a lot of assholes here, it really is a wonderful thing if you know how to use it. Or you can also use it to convince yourself that the world is flat. That's your business, I suppose. So I guess the next question would be, what about those schools that teach specific production and recording engineering techniques? And I really don't know because I've never been through any of those programs. But I will say, and this is just my opinion, that I think those skills are more easily self-taught with the help of the internet than all of the stuff that I spent all those years learning in the classical world. And depending on your learning style, it probably does help to have someone guiding you along, pointing you in the right direction in some cases. But it also feels like you could probably find individuals who you identify with stylistically and who are where you eventually want to be, and just learn directly from them if they're willing to teach you. There are a lot of incredible people sharing their processes online, and that's where I learned literally all of the production stuff that I know to this day. That and experimentation and trying things on my own. The simpler times when I didn't know the difference between a MIDI controller and a synthesizer. It's a less expensive time. Even if you pay those people to help you through either one-on-one coaching or a course that they offer, it's still an absolute drop in the bucket compared to the financial burden that you'll go through with the traditional education system, which is borderline criminal in my personal opinion. They sell it to you as a necessity coming out of high school when you're young and impressionable, with absolutely unrealistic expectations that you will be guaranteed some sort of job or position when you finish it. And then they saddle you with debt immediately before you even have a chance to get started building a life. And I've seen a lot of people that decades later still haven't reached the surface. They're still in the red, and that's just really sad. I was really fortunate and was able to receive music scholarships, which covered my undergraduate degree, and then I worked as a graduate assistant, which paid me a stipend for my master's degree, but that is something you absolutely should think about. I would never go in debt to get a degree these days unless it's in something that you can quickly pay back because you're guaranteed a position basically at the end of it. And in case you're wondering, that's almost never a music degree. Just find mentors that are willing to teach you either locally, privately, on the internet. Go out and listen to things that challenge you and make your ear better. And you'll start to develop your own taste, and you can lean into whatever you end up preferring. So it seems settled, right? There are absolutely no benefits to the traditional education system of studying classical music if you don't want to just perform classical music for the rest of your life. Except, while it might not have taught me directly how to make my snare sit perfectly in a mix, the extremely focused specialization did teach me a lot of bigger concepts that may be even more important than anything I've learned since. Specifically, by the time I got to the point of actually trying to build an artist career out on my own, I was well aware of what doing something really difficult that required a lot of persistence actually felt like, and I think that catches a lot of people who are just starting out by surprise. I had already experienced the benefits of things like delayed gratification, routine as a superpower, extreme discipline in a specific area or field. And I think those are absolutely necessary components for anyone today to make a career out of music. As a pianist at that level, it takes months, maybe even up to a year, to learn a full recital's worth of repertoire. And it is anything but a linear path. As one of my teachers once put it, learning and memorizing an hour-long recital is like trying to wallpaper a room by yourself. You fix one corner, and then you run to the other side of the room and try to repair whatever's gone wrong there, and then that corner that you just fixed starts to roll up on you again. And it's pretty much the same when you're trying to build a career for yourself. You're not going to have just a straight, steady line in most cases. There are going to be ups, and there are going to be downs. But overall, both of these things are processes that require consistency unencumbered by how you feel on a given day, or whether things are going really well or really bad. I think another benefit of studying the more traditional route is that you will inevitably be exposed to things that will expand your ear. Let me make a bold claim here. If you're only ever listening to things that you already like, I don't think you have good taste. In fact, I don't think you have taste at all. While I may not sit around listening to Webern or Sprechstimme all the time,
now this is a story all about how my life got flipped, turned upside down.
I'm aware of it. I know what it is. I have respect for it. I know that it took extreme craftsmanship, but it may have been the thing that I liked the most, and I could have spent an entire career diving more deeply into that and how to use it in my own music today. But most importantly, I think it allowed me to understand the difference between me liking something and something being well crafted. Those are not mutually exclusive qualities, despite what you will undoubtedly see in the comments section below. Look, there's no right or wrong way to make music, but the path that you ultimately choose will absolutely change your music in some way. For me personally, I feel like it has made my music different than some of my contemporaries. Notice I didn't say better. I have had more experience studying some of the most well-crafted music in all of history. And whatever you think of classical music or art music or however you want to categorize it, there's a reason most of it has lasted for centuries or multiple centuries. Most of it is extremely well put together, and there's a lot that we can learn from it, even if we don't make that kind of music that's directly influenced by it. Basically, a career in music can be really daunting whether you have a degree or not, and in some cases, it just delays you from getting started on the path that you might actually want to be on. But ultimately, in my case, I did learn skills that directly translated to everything that I've done since. Discipline to keep going when people say that I sound like Billy Bob Thornton in the comments, and the ability to see something through to its completion. So it's never a bad thing to dive deeply into something and truly master a thing. But looking back on it, what provided the most value for me personally was the one-on-one instruction that I got in all of my areas of applied study: piano, organ, and composition. All of my teachers that I ever had coming through college were incredible teachers, and I got really fortunate in that regard. But there's no guarantee that that will be the case. So just do your research on wherever you're looking to go before you commit 4 years of your life to doing that. And see if there are skilled people outside of the traditional university system who are willing to help you in your local area. Ultimately, I wouldn't change a thing for myself, and I don't regret that time spent anymore because it's part of what makes me unique. And I've just decided to embrace that. Turns out that having a slightly different path from everyone else in whatever thing you're trying to do is a really good thing. And if you're looking to stand out in a crowded field, you're better off leaning into whatever makes you different than everyone else. It took me a long time to figure that out, but I hope that this is helpful for you. I bet that there's more there than you realize. If you'd like to see more about my techniques and philosophies in composition, which kind of meld the classical training that I had with the more modern production side of things, you can check out this ebook right here. It's absolutely free and linked in the description below. Thanks as always for watching. Like the video if you liked the video. Subscribe if you want to see more of Billy Bob's Synthesizer Composition Man, and I'll see you in the next one.